Hello friends, welcome back to my show. There is a new movie in the theaters. It is called The Kashmir Files, and it is about the genocide and subsequent exodus of Hindus from the Kashmir Valley in 1990. This video is not yet another review of the film, but it intends to go much deeper. Together we will examine the root cause of this barbaric and heart-rending episode which the film covers. Unless the root cause is understood, we are only waiting for yet another repetition of the sordid happening. The film, as all of you know, exposes the symptoms that were pushed under the carpet and the happenings that people were blind to. In this root cause analysis, we shall dig deeper to find what is the root cause of the problem. What you see on the surface are the symptoms. When you dig deeper, you go to the root. It is the root that nourishes the symptoms. If you are hurt or upset by the content of this video, please do not watch. This is the advice of Justice Yashwant Verma of the Delhi High Court, who ruled in November 2021 in a matter related to banning a book that if you don't like any passage, you can skip the chapter. You can shut your eyes if you are feeling hurt. Likewise, earlier in August 2014, a bench of 3 judges headed by the then Chief Justice of India had given a similar ruling for a petition which was seeking to ban a film which was claimed to hurt the sentiments of a segment of society. Once again, the message was clear. If you do not like this video, don't watch. Do not hurt yourself. Therefore, in accordance with the various judgments pronounced by the highest courts of the land, you accept that by continuing to watch the video, you understand that you are free to stop anytime you are offended, or if you do not agree with the content. This film has generated typically the following responses: nitpicking on the historical facts, evaluating directorial competence, questioning acting quality, criticizing the storytelling art, and box office collection. We are going to go much beyond this, and we are not going to talk about any of these. Unfortunately, the end result of watching this film ends up in a blame game. The hat is passed around, the blackout by the press, the failure of the civil society to raise the issue, active participation of the state government, and a silent acceptance of the situation by the central government. But this blame game will not help us to prevent such occurrences in the future unless we understand what lies at the root. You may recall Rudyard Kipling's poem, 6 Honest Serving Men. It goes something like this. I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when, and how and where and who. Now this movie tells you what happened, when it happened, where it happened, and who were the people who did it, and how did it happen. But it does not really tell us the important question, why? And that is what we are going to take a look at. What happened is nothing new. It has always been happening in India. Only we have been turning a blind eye and failing to learn from the lessons. Back in 1909, one Lieutenant Colonel Upendra Narayan Mukherjee wrote a book called A Dying Race. And here is a quote from this book. What Lieutenant Colonel U.N. Mukherjee says is that Hindus are most ridiculously, most contemptibly ignorant. We have no idea about what is going on around us. Others are not so ignorant. How do the two communities stand? And he's talking about the Hindu community and the Muslim community. Mukherjee continues, the Mohammedans have a future and they believe in it. Hindus have no conception of it. Time is with them and time is against us. At the end of the years, they count their gains while we calculate our losses. They look forward towards a united Mohammedan world while we are awaiting our extinction. Very prophetic words, and I would suggest you read them over again. After watching the movie, the social media is flush with reactions. Typically, the reactions are crying and weeping, feeling sorry for the victims, counting our losses, just as Colonel Mukherjee had said, or blaming the government, or blaming United Nations for not intervening. These are typical reactions of hopelessness and helplessness, and we must rise above all these. The sad part is that nobody has asked why. To begin our root cause analysis, let us recall Article 25 of our Constitution. It guarantees freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation of religion. Of course, there's a caveat which says subject to public order, morality, health and other provisions of this part. All persons are equally entitled to the freedom of conscience and the right to freely profess, practice and propagate religion. Now mark the words public order, morality and health. It can be argued that there would have been no violence if the Kashmiri Hindus had just acquiesced. Either they had converted or they had left Kashmir without any fuss. Let us now look at the other side of the picture. What are the injunctions of religion for a Muslim? The two important authorities are the Holy Quran and the Hadith. Hadiths are a record of the traditions and sayings of the Prophet, revered and received as a major source of religious law and moral guidance, and they are second only in authority to the Holy Quran. Hadith, which is known as the Sunnah, is very important to both the Sunni as well as the Shia sects. The Sunni belief is that Quran needs the Sunnah more than the Sunnah needs the Quran. And also it is argued that Islam cannot be practiced without the Hadith. Now let us look at what is advised to be followed by a Muslim. Now before we dive into the details of the Sunnah and the Quran, let us see what the Supreme Court of India has to say about what is an integral part of religion. It was held by the Supreme Court that the test to determine the question in deciding what is an integral part of a religion is whether it is regarded as integral by the community following that religion or not. So, if Muslims believe in something being an integral part of their faith, so be it. Let me now read out to you some verses from the scriptures. These are just samples. I urge you to go deeper with some references that I shall provide later. Here is one from chapter 9, verse number 23 of the Holy Quran. And it says, O you who believe, that means Muslims, take not for awliya, which means take any support or help, even from your fathers and your brothers, if they prefer to disbelieve in Islam. And whoever of you does so, then he is one of the zalimun. And a zalimun is one of the wrongdoers. Typically, a zalimun is an idolater. People who worship idols. A disbeliever, that means one who does not believe in Allah and that Muhammad is his Rasul or messenger, and one who has not submitted to Islam. In other words, a true Muslim would even boycott his family, let alone friends, if they were not following Islam. I hope this message is driven deep into your heart. Here is another hadith. And Allah's messenger said, I have been ordered to fight the people till they say, none has the right to be worshipped but Allah. And if they say so, pray like our prayers, face our Qibla, and slaughter as we slaughter. Then their blood and property will be spared, and it will be sacred to us, and we will not interfere with them except legally, and their reckoning will be with Allah. Now do you understand why there was a genocide and why the Kashmiri Hindus fled? Here's yet another sample, and the reference is given above. It is that the messenger of Allah said, I have been commanded that I should fight against people till they declare that there is no God but Allah. And when they profess it, there is no God but Allah, their blood and riches are guaranteed protection on my behalf, except where it is justified by law, and their affairs rest with Allah. And then he, that is the Holy Prophet, recited this verse of the Holy Quran. Thou art not over them a warden, and the reference to the chapter and the verses given in brackets. All the hadiths are about following the example of the Prophet. There are thousands upon thousands of hadiths, and each one of them is a directive for them to follow, because the Prophet was the ideal person. And what the messenger of Allah said was, I will expel the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula and will not leave any but Muslim. In other words, this is an accepted religious practice to expel non-believers from the land, because it is that all land belongs to Allah and it is for His followers to enjoy. Once again, you can clearly see why the Kashmiri Hindus were expelled or killed. And now you are bound to ask, what about the loot, the violence and the rape? Friends, please move your fingers over your keyboard or your screens and do some research yourself. Please go to the websites which are mentioned on your screen and go to these verses in the Quran, in the Hadith, and look for yourself, shed your ignorance, understand the gravity of the issue, go to the root cause. Don't just look at the symptoms and don't get involved in a blame game, which is absolutely worthless, non-productive, and as a matter of fact, disempowering. So friends, at least now, do you understand why the loudspeakers from the mosques were announcing Raliv, Saliv and Galiv, convert, leave or die? These were what they considered pious injunctions of their faith. They were just following the books. Mr. Jagmohan, the governor of Jammu and Kashmir, has mentioned in his book, My Frozen Turbulence in Kashmir, and I quote from that book. He says, some callers told me that they would just hold on to their telephones so that I could hear the terrible slogans and exhortations that were emanating from the hundreds of loudspeakers fitted on the mosques. Let us now take a look at what was found by an Indian researcher, Zenab Banu, who did an in-depth study on the cause and effect of communal riots in India since the 18th century. This was the topic for her PhD thesis, and it was later published as a book by Popular Prakashan in 1989. Zenab Banu documented major Hindu-Muslim riots spread over a 250-year period. And she concluded that more than 95% of those riots which led to bloodshed were initiated by Muslims. The Gujarat Muslims constitute a mere 9% of the total population of the state. So if we do a calculation like she did in her thesis, we find that Muslims as a group are a whopping 192 times more prone to resort to violence than others. So friends, what happens next? After all this breast beating, things are going to be back to normal again. We'll be soon forwarding newer messages on WhatsApp, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. The mainstream media will also pick up yet another war or famine or some such occurrence or a tsunami. Nothing in the law book will prevent future occurrences. And I'm surprised that it does not shock us that not a single court took any suo motu notice of this genocide when people were pouring into camps in Delhi, just a few miles away from the Supreme Court of India. All in the name of Article 25, which guarantees practice and propagation of religion. So friends, let us do a little thought experiment. How would it be if Bharat were to become a Hindu Rashtra based on Sanatani Indic values? These values cover the Jains, Buddhists, Sikhs, and even Parsis, because they accepted India where there was tolerance, there was acceptance, and there was openness. They came from a very prosperous country where they had a very good status, but were being persecuted by Islamic forces. What we need is a constitutional acceptance of the values of a Hindu Rashtra. Hinduism, as we all know, is inherently secular. In fact, it is open to LGBTQ, atheists, agnostics, or people of any kind of a philosophy or religious following. It has no injunctions of killing, punishing, raping, looting. It has acceptance of a justice system which goes along with present times. It is very adaptable in almost every respect because it respects individuality and not groupism. And finally, we do not need a certificate of openness because it has always been open to winds of change from all directions, often to its own harm. So friends, please think about the choices that you will have to make, if not today, at least in a few days or after a generation or two. You could continue to moan and groan and keep counting and calculating your losses, much as Colonel Mukherjee had said more than 100 years ago. Or we can wait for the dawn of a caliphate and convert, submit. Mind you, this caliphate or khilafat was supported by the revered father of our nation, Mr. M.K. Gandhi, who believed that peace would prevail once there was a khilafat. Or we could migrate en masse as refugees to non-Muslim nations if they would accept us. Another way out would be to hope for the Chinese to take over the nation because they are managing their Uyghur problem very effectively and very efficiently. The last choice that demands your active participation is to make this an election issue. And the election issue is regarding adapting the constitution to Sanatani Indic Hindu civilizational values. Unless it becomes an election issue, nothing is going to transform or change. And if not now, as I mentioned earlier, in a generation or two, you will be a minority in some nation as a refugee or immigrant. Think about it peacefully and then take action. Friends, wake up from your slumber. Let this film be a wake-up call. Otherwise, you're going to end up waking up every morning obediently to the Azan prayer call every morning till your last day and hope to gain paradise. Dear viewers, thank you very much for your attention. Please share this video and start a discussion on constitutional reform. Please circulate it as much as you can. The movie Kashmir Files could be the trigger that was required to wake all of us up. If not now, it's going to be never. Once again, thank you very much and bye-bye.